Good day, my name is Julian Benoit. I am a paleontologist at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. And this is a presentation on an African perspective on whale evolution. A presentation that I will make with this accent because I'm French and this is my actual accent. I'm sorry about that. Here I'm putting my email address on the screen, julian.benoit@wits.ac.za. You can email me if there is anything that you could not understand about what I was talking about because of my accent or because I was too technical, or maybe if you have any question because you were interested, you are curious about the things that I talked about, please feel free to contact me. I will answer back gladly. So yes, this will be a presentation on the evolution of whales with an African perspective. So why taking that African perspective? Because there are hundreds of videos on internet about the evolution of whales, and I wanted to propose something that will not take the usual Western research point of view, something that will more focus on the specimens, on the fossils that were found in Africa. So a content that will be unique because of this African perspective. So let's start first with asking what is the current knowledge on the fossil record of whales in Africa. So on the left side, you can see a ear bone. It is the bone that contains the inner ear. So this ear bone is a 48 million years old bone. It's a fossil from a marine mammal that lived in Tunisia. So somewhere around here on that map. So this marine mammal lived in Tunisia, and we know it's a marine mammal because of various adaptations that this bone revealed us using CT scanning. So just like a medical scanner, but with a much higher resolution. So we use CT scanning to study that bone, and we could study the inner ear that you can see now thanks to the transparency. And this inner ear tells us that the semicircular canals are relatively small, which means that this animal was a swimming animal, and that the cochlea was adapted to hear underwater. And there is also the very high density of the bone that tells us that this animal was capable of hearing underwater. So we were looking at a marine mammal, and the only thing that we knew about that marine mammal was that bone. And we had to make a decision. We had to make the decision, what do we call this? Do we call it a whale? Do we call it a sirenian, so manatee or dugong? Or do we call it a seal, a pinniped, so a fur seal or maybe a walrus or whatever? So do we call it a relative of the seals? So the seals were excluded quite quickly because the seals would not appear before millions of years from that time, and not in Africa. They would appear in Northern America. So the seals were quickly excluded, but we were left with the whales and the sirenians, which were around at that time. We knew that. But were they around in Tunisia at that time? And the big answer was that sirenians maybe, but whales no. And why was that? Because at that time we did not know there was so many. We did not know so much of whales that old in Africa. So of course whales were found, fossil whales were found in Africa, but they were much younger than that. So because there was so few old whales in Africa, we decided that we would go for sirenian. Also, we make that decision because of some similarities between that bone and the equivalent bone in manatees, in modern manatees and dugongs. And now, 7 years later, we have a much different pictures. In 7 years, many discoveries were made, and many new species of early whales were discovered in Africa. And this is a map on the right side, a map made by one of my colleagues, Lambert from Belgium, who studies whales full time, fossil whales full time, and he discovered a new fossil whale in South America. And the ancestors of these fossil whales, we know, lived in India. And what's amazing is that we made so many discoveries in just those 7 years since 2013. We made so many discoveries. Well, so many discoveries were made, not particularly by me and my supervisor, my PhD supervisor, but so many discoveries were made since my PhD thesis that my colleague Lambert was capable of reconstructing a migration route following those dots. All those white dots here are whales, early whales that were discovered. And following those dots, he was capable of reconstructing, just connecting those dots, he was capable of reconstructing the migration route of his new species of whale from South America from its origin in India through Africa. So many discoveries were made that now we have a trail of dots that documents the migration of a species from India to South America. So that's how many amazing discoveries were made in the recent years. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about their relevance for the evolution of whales. And this is on the left a map of all the fossil whales that were discovered in Africa, and you can see that there are a few hotspots. You have some discoveries that were made in Morocco and along the coast here in Angola, but the two big hotspots, and before the big hotspots, you can see there is one whale here that was discovered in the Rift Valley. So the Rift Valley is mostly famous for hominids, but there is one whale, a beaked whale, that was discovered there, which demonstrated that the Rift Valley at some point, 17 million years ago, was connected to the sea. We don't know exactly how, but this whale was discovered in the Rift Valley alongside hominids. So it's quite interesting, an interesting discovery. So, and you can see there are two hotspots of whale discoveries, of fossil whale discoveries in Africa: Egypt, particularly the Valley of Whales, so Wadi al-Haytan in Egyptian, as it is called there. So the Valley of Whales is a place where you find literally fossil whales lying on the ground. So they are extremely abundant, and even just a few weeks a few days actually from the time I made that presentation, there was a new paper yet describing a new whale from the Valley of Whales called Aegicetus. So it's a very active research area, and it's a very rich spot for whale discovery. And there is South Africa, particularly the shoreline, because many fossil whales, many whales are fossilized in the sea, and then the fossils are eroded and bring by the high tide to the shores. Also, there are many fishermen that bring back fossils because they managed to catch them in their nets. So here are some examples of those whales that were discovered in South Africa. So it's mostly beaked whales, and you can see the beak particularly is very well preserved. So it's almost the complete skull with the rostrum here, the eye socket here, and the top of the skull, because it's very dense and it preserves very well. And there are, as you can see, dozens of species. Easicoziphius, so named like the Easico Museum, Africanacetus, so the whale from Africa. So you can see that many whales that were discovered in South Africa. So many species, mostly of beaked whale. And we can also follow the evolution of whales through their parasites, and particularly the barnacles that the humpback whale carries on its back. And the fossils of these barnacles are extremely interesting because they enable us to reconstruct the migration routes of the humpback whales. And this is a map that reconstructs all the migration routes that were reconstructed using the fossil record of these little parasites on the humpback whale skin. So what's interesting is that you find that most of these migration routes are still available today, are still the actual migration routes of humpback whales, but there is one migration route that they found do not exist anymore, and it's the one that goes to the Mediterranean Sea. So about 2 million years ago, whales used to migrate to the Mediterranean Sea. And the oldest of such barnacles that we find in South Africa is 160,000 years ago. So at least we know that humpback whales have been there for 400,000 years. But they probably have been there much longer than that. Maybe we are looking at a gap in the fossil record, because my dear colleague, Dr. Romala Govender from Cape Town, has discovered on the Langebandweg site on the west coast fossil park near Cape Town. She has discovered and studied some ear bones, very similar to the one I've shown you in the beginning. She discovered some ear bones, and she attributed them to the ancestors of modern whales, including the humpback whales. And these bones are about 5 million years old. So the ancestors of humpback whales have been swimming along the South African shores for at least 5 million years, and the humpback whales themselves, as inferred from their parasites, have been there for at least 164,000 years ago. So we are looking at very deep time and very long stories of these whales, thanks to their fossils and thanks to their parasites. So now the main question of that presentation was the evolution of whales. And to elucidate the evolution of whales is quite a tricky story. And to do that, I just want to start with the question, where do marine species come from? If you look at a penguin, for example, you can easily imagine where penguins come from. They are birds. Everything in their anatomy, in their morphology, everything in their behavior is bird-like. So it's not difficult to imagine that the ancestor of penguins the ancestor was a bird, just a marine bird that was capable of flying and swimming, and that lose the ability to fly and improve the ability for swimming. This is pretty easy. This is not a far-fetched hypothesis. Now you look at the seal on the left. The seal, it's a bit more tricky, but I mean, seals are definitely dogs that swim. They are dogs that learn to swim, and they are so likely. They look so much like dogs that we actually say that they bark, much like dogs. And everything in their anatomy is extremely dog-like, and they still have the whiskers and they still have the fur. So they look very much like just fat dogs that swim. But now when you look at a dolphin, and I thank Lloyd for providing this picture, because it's a very lacquer picture. So now if you look at dolphins and if you look at whales, what do you see? You see nothing. Nothing in their morphology, nothing in their anatomy looks like anything else on Earth. They are unique. They are absolutely unique. So when you ask yourself, where do marine species come from? Usually it's very easy, but with dolphins, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, but we have some clues. For example, here is on the top left a baby dolphin, and we know that baby dolphin drink milk, and the mother dolphin has nipples located on the belly, and these nipples are used for the baby to suck the milk, and just like any mammal do. So we know that whales and dolphins are mammals. And if you look at the snout of a humpback whale, it has some knobs, and when you dissect these knobs, inside you find an hair follicle. So there is hair in whales, in some whales at least. So they have hair, and they do milk their young, just like any other mammal do. So at least we know that these are mammals, and that's why they are called marine mammals. And if you look deeper in their anatomy, you find that they have lungs. So they have to come back to the surface to breathe, and this indicates one thing. It indicates that previously, before, whales were not marine animals. They were terrestrial animals because they have all the equipment to breathe in a terrestrial environment, not to breathe underwater. These lungs are the most stupid organs that you can imagine if you live underwater, because they can actually drown. They have to live underwater with the constant threat that they could actually drown. So that's an extremely inconvenient organ to have. You'd rather have gills, like fish, for example. So because that organ is there, we know that the ancestor of whales was terrestrial and was a mammal. So the ancestor of whales was probably a four-legged mammal, and we are very confident about the four-leg mammal because when you look at the limbs of a dolphin, it has the exact same organization in terms of bone structure as any other mammal, any other terrestrial mammals. So this is the paddle, this is the forelimb of the dolphin, but we know that whales and occasionally dolphins can have hind limbs. So most whales have a remnant of the pelvis, and sometimes you can even have a remnant of the femur, which is the thigh bone. And some dolphins do have, like, it's mostly a genetic anomaly, but these dolphins sometimes do have hind limbs that pops out once in a while, in so many generations, because of a mutation. So this all indicates that whales are descended from a terrestrial mammal. Now the big question is, what type of mammal are they descended from? Because mammal, it's about 5,000 species today. So it's a huge diversity from mice to elephants. So what type of mammal was the ancestor of whales? And for this, we look at the genetics. We have to imagine that at some point there was a four-legged whale walking on land, and we have no idea what it looked like. So it's just a funny drawing to introduce you to the concept that we are going to look for the ancestor of whales that was a four-legged whale. And that four-legged whale, we can have an idea of what it looked like thanks to genetic studies. So we looked at the DNA, and the DNA tells us the DNA of whales and dolphins and killer whales, for example, on that picture. And we find that the whales belong to the same genealogical tree. We also call that a phylogenetic tree. So they belong to the same family tree as a group of mammal that we call the artiodactyls. So the artiodactyls, it's the group in which you find antelopes and bovids and so cows and goats and sheep. So the bovids. You also find the giraffes. You also find there the camels, pigs, and hippos. So that tree makes a little sense in the way that it puts the hippos right next to the whales. And it makes no sense because these are all herbivorous species and these are piscivorous species. So in terms of ecology, there is a huge gap between the two. And in terms of morphology, whales, again, have nothing to do with these animals. These animals have hooves and whales don't. These animals sometimes have horns and they have big teeth and so on, and they have adaptations to dry environments that we don't find in whales. So it's very, very difficult to know what would the common ancestor of all these animals would have looked like. So what did our four-legged whale looked like. It doesn't really help that much. Now it's time to look at the fossil record and trying to find the answer in the fossil record. And the fossil record is actually very good. It's very complete for whales. We have a very good series of transitional fossils that document the evolution of whales. So I'm going to go through those fossils, but not all of them. Of course, I will just give you a subset with, as I said, a particular African perspective on it. So we are going to start from present day, and we will jump to 30 million years ago, and then 10 million years by 10 million years until we reach that four-legged ancestor. So first, let's start with modern whales. Modern whales are divided into the Odontoceti, the echolocating whales, or toothed whales because they have teeth. So think about the dolphins, the big whale, the sperm whale, the killer whale. They all belong to the Odontoceti. And they all use echolocation. So echolocation, in case you don't know, but I'm sure you are all whale enthusiasts, so I'm sure you know what is echolocation, but it's just the production of ultrasound to use them as a sonar. So that's why you have here that little submarine. I did not put it in yellow, but I should have had. So that submarine uses a sonar. It uses ultrasound that bounce on the elements in the water, and that gives you a sonic picture of what is in the water. And Odontoceti are masters in the use of these ultrasounds. Unlike the Mysticeti, so the baleen whales, so Mysticeti are usually very big compared to Odontoceti, with a few exceptions, of course. They are usually very big, and they use their baleens, so their baleens, which is this fluffy pad on their palate, which are not teeth, by the way. These are not teeth. These are actually more like hairs that grow on the palate, and they use them to filter the water, to filter the prey, tiny prey like krill and shrimps and small fish out of the water. So I'm sure you're not learning anything there, but I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. So now we are and I want to emphasize before that in present day whales, as I said, nothing helps us to find who is their ancestor. So that's what these red crosses are for. So now we are going to look 30 million years from now, and 30 million years from now, what were the ancestors of Odontoceti and Mysticeti looked like? And this is where it becomes interesting, particularly for the Mysticeti. So the ancestors of early baleen whales, looked a bit like this. So this is the skull view from underneath, so from the mouth side. So you're looking inside the mouth here of that skull. So first thing interesting with that skull is that it's very small. It's Aetiocetus from North America, a specimen that I could see when I visited San Diego last year. And this specimen is about that big, so it's about the size, the skull is about the size of my arm. So it's quite a small skull for as far as baleen whales go. So that's the first interesting thing. It's not as big as the modern whales. And what's interesting is that it has teeth, unlike modern baleen whales. So modern baleen whales don't have teeth. They have these very strange baleens, which are hair-like structure. But when you look at baby whales and when you dissect a baby whale, you will find that they do have tooth sockets. So the point of insertion of the teeth inside the jaw are still there in the baby, but then they are resorbed in the adult and they completely disappear, and no teeth come out of those sockets. But in the past, 30 million years ago, they did have teeth, very well developed, as you can see, very well developed teeth. And when you zoom in onto the palate, you find also that they have this red furrow. Well, these furrows that have been colored in red, and these furrows are the point of insertion of baleens. So those very hair-like structures that they use to skim the water. And so this is very interesting because it shows us that originally baleen whales also had teeth, and both the baleens and the teeth were present at the same time. And then the teeth disappeared in modern whales. And also, we have another specimen also from North America called Coronodon. And in Coronodon, the teeth, you can see those very big teeth of that animal. So this is the skull of the animal. It's very much like a modern whale. It's very flat, as you can see, and very triangular, like a modern whale is. But on the other side of the skull, the teeth, you can see, are very big, triangular, with those big denticles like this. It's a unique morphology, and you can see that there is an overlap between the teeth, which means that the water was going through the teeth and was filtered by the teeth. So the teeth and the baleens were working together to filter the water, to skim the water out of its fish and plankton to feed the animal. So it's a very, very interesting tooth morphology that we have there. And what is fascinating is when you look at the Odontoceti, like Echovenator, also from the same time in North America, then we see that this Echovenator is definitely an ancestor of dolphins. You can see the outline of the body. It looks very much like a dolphin, and it has an inner ear that we could study using the CT scanning. And this inner ear is definitely adapted to hear ultrasounds. So it's definitely an echolocating whale. And this echolocating whale also has the same type of triangular teeth, but these teeth this time were used to hunt fish, like in modern dolphins. So it's two different set of views from the same type of teeth. And what's interesting is the shape of this teeth. It's unique to early whales, and it's triangular with denticles. So I put it there under 30 million years because we are going to follow that morphology that you never see in modern whales, by the way. But it's only present in fossil whales, and this morphology will be our red line, our bottom line that we are going to follow to the very ancestors of whales. So now we jump to 40 million years ago. We have that clue, the dentition, the tooth morphology that is our, as I was saying, our red line, and we follow that red line to 40 million years ago, when there was only one whale family called the Archaeoceti. So the Archaeoceti are the ancestors of the Odontoceti and the Mysticeti. So the Archaeoceti, sometimes between 40 and 30 million years ago, will split into two to give birth to the two family of whales that we know today. But 40 million years ago, these two families were one and had only one common ancestor, the Archaeocetes. And these Archaeocetes are heavily represented in Africa. There is a lot of them represented in Africa. And one of the most famous is Basilosaurus from Egypt. So Basilosaurus, you can see here, the skeleton looks very much like a whale. It's a very long and streamlined body, so very well adapted for swimming. The arm is already changed into a paddle. It is quite short. And you can see the very long tail, and at the end of the tail, you have a vertebra that is rounded. And it's rounded because it serves as an articulation for the fluke to move. So we know that Basilosaurus had a fluke, just like modern whales. So it was very well adapted for swimming. And it was a carnivorous animal, as you can see from its big teeth. And by the way, you can see that the skull is the thing that is the most different from the rest, from any modern whale. But it's quite similar to the one of Echovenator. You can see it's more or less the same type of skull, just Echovenator has a much longer snout. But here you have a shorter snout because here the blowhole is not completely migrated to the top of the skull. The blowhole is sort of halfway between the top of the snout and the top of the skull. So the blowhole is not in his definite position yet, which is what you would expect in a whale ancestor. But But yeah, the dentition is typically made of these triangular multicusps teeth. So we follow our line and we find the same dentition in Basilosaurus, which guarantees that we are definitely looking at the ancestor of the species that we looked at previously. And the very, very interesting fact about Basilosaurus is its limb, the hind limbs. So Basilosaurus has a remnant, a relictual structure of the hind limbs that was located in the pelvic area. So you can see that hind limbs here is magnified. You have the femur here, which is the thigh bone, the tibia and fibula, so the two bones of the leg. And here you have a foot with 3 fingers left, only 3 fingers left, which definitely demonstrate that whales used to have 4 limbs. And this one shows us. So that those hind limbs were not functional, they could not use them because it's so small compared to the body, but it's the sign that the ancestors of Basilosaurus had 4 legs and lived on land. Just like what we were expecting by looking at the lungs of our modern whales. And Basilosaurus is not the only one fossil whale that we find 40 million years ago in Africa. You have another one from Egypt is Egyptocetus. From Togo, you have Togocetus. And from Senegal, you have Carolinacetus. And Carolinacetus is extremely interesting. So the skull, well, the head here is very similar to that of Basilosaurus with the big triangular teeth. The blowhole that is not completely retracted to the top of the skull, but it's not terminal on the snout either, so it's quite halfway migrated to the blowhole position. But what's interesting is the limbs. So we have very well preserved limbs of Carolinacetus from Senegal, and we know that Carolinacetus was capable of walking. His legs were big enough for walking, but the fingers were also far apart to form a webbing between the fingers. So that's what is reconstructed here. So they could swim with their fingers and they could also walk with their limbs, just like seals can do today. So 40 million years ago, Carolinacetus from Senegal was at the same stage of adaptation to life in water, more or less, than modern seals are today. So it was the seal of the 40 million years ago world, if you prefer. And here you can see it's reconstructed with a small fluke. The fluke is not completely developed, and you can see it has very well developed hind limbs also. And we know a close relative of Carolinacetus. We know there is a close relative of Carolinacetus in Pakistan called Maiacetus. And this one was found with a baby in its belly, and the baby was coming out of the belly head first, not tail first like in modern whales. And this means one thing. It means that if the baby was coming out of the belly head first, it means that the species like Carolinacetus and Maiacetus were not giving birth in the water. They were giving birth on land. This definitely demonstrates that they were capable of walking on land. So that's why now I'm going to put this foot here, which is another landmark that we are going to follow. So that foot means that these archaeocytes were capable of walking. So we have another feature that we can follow through time to help us find that ancestor that we are looking for, that ancestor that we hope lived 15 million years ago. So for now, we know that we have whales that walk, that could walk, and that have 4 limbs. So what was the common ancestor of whale? What was the whale ancestor like when it used to walk on land? Well, some 15 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, this fossil was discovered. It's Indoeus from Pakistan. So Indoeus lived about 48, 50 million years ago, and it was a completely quadrupedal animal. So you can see the legs are completely developed. They are not changed into paddles. You can see that the elbow and the knees are perfectly functional, so it could flex, could fold its arm and move just like a terrestrial animal moves. So I'm putting that foot here as a landmark. And the other interesting thing about Indoeus is its teeth. The teeth, you can see, are squared in Indoeus. They are not triangular like we should find them. But we found a close relative of Indoeus which does have this triangular morphology. It's called Sibocerus from Europe. And Sibocerus has this very triangular and sharp teeth when it was a baby. So these are the milk teeth of Sibocerus. So this means that Indoeus and its close relatives had big squared molars like herbivores when they were adult, but they had those carnivorous teeth when they were babies. So maybe it means that they were eating differently depending if they were adults or juveniles. This is something that we do see in some modern species, like the baby eats something different than the adult. But the adult Indoeus was herbivorous, definitely. But we can put that landmark too, the triangular tooth is a landmark that we do find in Indoeus and its close relatives. But what definitely makes Indoeus a close relative of whales is not much its tooth morphology, it's the morphology of its hearing apparatus, of its ears. So when you look at the ear region of Indoeus, you find that big ball-shaped structure, which is the tympanibula, so it's the resonating chamber of the ear. And in Indoeus, it's very big and very thick. And it's very dense also. And if you remember, a dense ear region, a dense ear bone, is something that we find in marine species, and particularly we find it in the archaeocetes. So here you have that big, rounded, and very thick and dense structure. It's the auditory bulla. And here you find it in a modern killer whale, big and round and strongly ossified, so very dense. So this is an adaptation to hear underwater that you find in modern whales, in ancient whales, and in Indoeus, that indicate that Indoeus is definitely related to modern whales and was already capable of hearing underwater. So why is a dense ear bone an adaptation to hear underwater? It's because it isolates the cochlea. So if the cochlea is isolated, then the sound cannot be transmitted through the skull, because water has the same density as the body. So if you don't isolate your inner ear, your cochlea will pick the sounds from everywhere around it. So from outside, which is where it's supposed to pick the sound, but also from inside your skull, because the sound goes through your body like it goes through water. So marine species do have to isolate their cochlea so that they can only hear the sound that is coming from outside and not the sound that is transmitted through the skull. So it's a bit technical, but no, don't worry. This is not essential to understand that Indoeus is directly connected to whales through the morphology of its ear region, and particularly the auditory bulla. And here, this is what is traced there. Indoeus definitely gives us a clue of a character, a trait that enables us to directly connect modern days whales to all the fossil whales that we've looked at so far. So that's why Indoeus is important. It's because that feature of the auditory bulla is the same in Indoeus, in archaeocetes, in early odontocetes and mysticetes and in modern whales and dolphins. So that's a crucial character, and that's the very red line that we wanted to find originally and that we could not find just by looking at modern species. So that's the contribution of the fossil record. It's to give us the very character that will enable us to connect modern species to an ancient species, and this ancient species will tell us what was the ancestor of modern whales like. So now let's answer that question. What was the ancestor of modern whales like? So this is a reconstruction of Indoeus. So it's a small herbivore, we could see from the teeth. It's a small herbivore. It is adapted to live underwater because we could see the ear bones were adapted to here underwater, but it can walk on its four legs. So it's depicted walking at the bottom of a lake, of a shallow lake, as you can see. And it looked very much like a mouse deer. So a chevrotine or a moose deer. So it's a kind of very small herbivorous species that live today. And what enables us to connect Indoeus to the ancestor of whales is the morphology of the ankle. So when you look at the ankle bone of Indoeus, it's not like in most mammals. In most mammals, what you have at the level of the ankle, you have an articulation that articulates the foot. So if you imagine my hand, here is the foot articulates with the leg, but then the ankle itself does not articulate with the foot. So the foot and the ankle are completely stuck and they move together. But in Indoeus, you have an articulation of the ankle with the leg, and you have another articulation of the ankle with the foot. So you have a double articulation. And this double articulation enables pendulous movements. It's an adaptation for running usually. So this double articulation is not encountered in many species today. It's encountered only in pigs, hippopotamuses, camel, cows, sheep, antelopes, and all those animals that we called the artiodactyls. This morphology of the ankle with two articulations with a double, we call it the double pullade astragalus. The astragalus is the name of the ankle bone. So this double pullade astragalus is a feature that we only find in artiodactyls. So we just bridge the gap between whales and the artiodactyls. Indoeus bridges the gap between the whales and artiodactyls. That trail of fossil clues that we followed all the way to 50 million years ago led us to bridge that gap that we pointed out at the beginning of this presentation between the mysticetes, odontocetes, and the other terrestrial species. So now we have definite evidence that whales are descended from a small artiodactyls that looked just like Indoeus. It looked like an aquatic moose deer. And it's very interesting because today we still have aquatic moose deer. For example, here you have Hyemoscus, so it's the African chevrotine, the African moose deer. And this African moose deer exemplifies how whales could have adapted to life in water from an herbivorous ancestor. It doesn't mean that the African chevrotine, that this particular species is the ancestor of whales, but it's just an equivalent of Indoeus. Indoeus was probably very similar to this African moose deer, and here you can see it jumping in water, so to protect against a predator. So maybe Indoeus was similar to this Hyemoscus, to this species, and it was it became adapted to life in water for protection against predator, or maybe because it was eating algae and other aquatic plants at the bottom of the water. So this is how we imagine whales came out. So now you may wonder, and the hippopotamuses exemplifies that adaptation to life in water is not uncommon in these artiodactyls. It's actually quite common. And if you think also about some antelopes, like the waterbuck or the sitatungas, these are antelopes that are also adapted to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. And now the very curious point is the adaptation to a piscivorous diet, so to a fish, the fish-eating habitus of modern whales and dolphins. And it's actually not that uncommon to see modern artiodactyls eating on meat, because fish is just a different kind of meat. And here you can see a giraffe here. A very common behavior of giraffe is to eat the bones, and these bones can have, well, they eat bones to get the calcium out of them and the phosphorus. But I mean, sometimes they can eat on carcasses that still keep quite a fair amount of flesh. And here you have the example of a North American deer, and this deer is eating a rabbit, and this rabbit is definitely fresh. So this is a behavior that they have to survive the very cold winters over there. But you can see that it's not that uncommon for an herbivore to eat meat. It's not that uncommon at all. So you can easily evolve the diet of modern whales and dolphins from an herbivorous diet. That's not a big obstacle. And finally, if you know, of course, if you know about cows and sheep, you will see that when cows and sheep encounter, for example, a nest on the ground, a bird that nested on the ground, they will gladly eat the eggs or the babies, because it's a supplement in protein that is not unwelcome by these animals. So this is how we think the story of whales evolved, with tiny herbivorous animals that slowly became adapted to life in water for protection or for food. And then, because they get adapted to life in water, they also became adapted to eat more animal protein that they were already eating. So this is how paleontology, and this is how that common effort from geneticists and from paleontologists all around the world. So I told you about my colleague from South Africa. I told you about my colleague from Belgium. There are a lot of discoveries that were made in Pakistan, in North America, elsewhere in Africa. So it's really an international effort, and of course France. There's really an international effort to decipher the evolution of whales. And this is not only an international effort, it's also a multidisciplinary effort that involves comparative anatomy on modern species, that involves geneticists, that involves paleontologists, ecologists, and etc., etc. So it's really a fascinating story that fascinates more than one researcher in the world. And I hope I could get you interested into that story, and that you would like to know more. So if you want to know more, and if you want to chat with me, please email me to this email address that I put it again at the bottom of the screen, and we can chat about that, and we can exchange about that topic. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day.